When you leave an avoidant, they don't see it the way you think they do. They don't imagine you walking away with dignity, closing the chapter, and never looking back. No, they expect you to play the same old game they've seen before, a few days of silence, then a message, then an explanation, and eventually the same old relationship again. An avoidant builds their entire mental safety on these expectations. It allows them to push you away without losing you completely. In their mind, they've already written the ending to your story, and in that ending, you come back. But when you don't, when you break that pattern without any warning, when you stop playing the role they had written for you, something begins to shift inside them. Quiet, but deep. It's not always visible on the surface. They won't suddenly run after you in the street or flood your phone with messages. But inside, it's as if a string quietly snaps. That silent certainty you'll always be there begins to fall apart. And that's the moment when dignity becomes more powerful than words. Because now you're not convincing them with explanations. You're showing, without saying a single line, that you've changed the ending of the story. From that moment, the avoidant enters 5 silent realizations, 5 inner shifts they don't immediately recognize, but which slowly change their behavior, their thoughts, and their feelings. In this video, we'll open up these 5 silent truths so you can see how your absence and your silence can have an impact that your words may never have been able to create. The illusion of control cracks when the old script no longer works. An avoidant carries a specific mental blueprint into every relationship. This blueprint isn't written in a book or saved in a journal. It's built over years of habits, fears, and past experiences. Deep down, they hold a quiet belief. I can control the situation because I know exactly when and how the other person will come back. This belief is a self-defense mechanism. Psychiatrist Edmund Bergler called it emotional script dependency, the idea that a person repeats the same mental story so often they become convinced it will work every single time, no matter how circumstances change. For the avoidant, the story usually looks like this. Closeness builds, anxiety rises, they pull away silently, the other person returns, everything starts again. This pattern gives them an illusion of control. They feel like they are setting the rules of the game, and no matter how far they withdraw, you will always return to play the role they've assigned you. But when you refuse to play the game, when you cross out the next page of their script, and especially when you walk away without explanation and without coming back, the first crack appears. This crack doesn't make a sound, but deep inside, their mental framework starts to shake. They think, this wasn't in the story. Now what? In that moment, they realize their control was only an illusion. They were never truly controlling the relationship. They were only soothing their own fear. And when you leave without activating that fear in the same old way, their entire psychological structure begins to shift. Bergler once wrote, "The most painful discovery is that the game you thought you were winning was never under your control." That's exactly what this moment feels like for the avoidant. An internal earthquake, quiet on the outside, but shattering on the inside. They may still smile, go about their daily life, meet people, but in their subconscious, a single question keeps echoing. If this script can fail, can I ever really hold on to anyone? For the avoidant mind, this is not an easy question. It's not just about you leaving, it's the collapse of their entire attachment strategy. No matter how hard they try, the old story can't be repeated again because the central character, you, has already left the stage. And that's the first self-realization, the moment they see that the magic of the old script has been broken and the game will never be the same again. The unsettling calm when your silence feels heavier than confrontation. An avoidant is always skilled in the game where words are few and distance is plenty. For them, it's a safe strategy. The less they speak, the less responsibility, the less intimacy, and the more control they feel. They often expect that if you're hurt or if you need answers, you'll show it in anger, start a debate, or demand an explanation. That's easy for them because arguments and confrontation act like a shield. They can hide behind it, avoiding the real question of why they're pulling away. But when you say nothing, when you leave without noise, without explanation, without blame, that silence creates an unexpected vacuum for them. It's the moment when staying silent is no longer their power move. It becomes a weight they have to carry. Psychologist Rollo May once said, "Silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything." For the avoidant, your silence becomes a mirror, one they can't turn away from. Because silence doesn't question, doesn't demand, doesn't negotiate, it just stays. And in that stillness, its power grows. At first, they try to ignore it. They go about their days, laugh with friends, convince themselves it's nothing. But in the quiet hours of the night, when all the noise dies down, your absence becomes a deep echo, an echo that reminds them you didn't retreat out of weakness. You stepped away from strength. This calm unsettles them, because in confrontation, there's always hope. Hope that the other person is still engaged, still cares. But when you go silent, even that hope disappears. There's no fight, no defense, no justification, just empty space. And that emptiness is the loudest thing in the room. Philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Your silence forces the avoidant into that exact state, sitting alone, facing their own actions without the distraction of arguments or emotional noise. This is the unsettling calm, when your silence dismantles every excuse, every justification, and every old game in their mind. It lasts longer than confrontation, because after a fight, people forget. But silence lingers in the mind for days, weeks, and months. This is the fourth silent realization. When the avoidant realizes your absence is heavier and more unshakable than any words, and it's a weight they can't put down. The echo of what's missing when small triggers remind them of your presence. For an avoidant, your absence rarely hits like a single loud explosion. It doesn't strike like a thunderclap on the day you leave. It creeps in slowly in the form of small, uninvited echoes hidden in the middle of ordinary life. Sometimes it's someone's laugh that sounds just like yours. Sometimes it's a scent that reminds them of the drink you always ordered. Sometimes it's the sudden realization that no one checks in on them anymore. These aren't grand events. They are little collisions with memory. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future you can no longer have." This is exactly what the avoidant experiences here. They don't just miss you, they miss the possibility tied to you, the version of life where you were still woven into their everyday. For so long, they treated your presence like background music in a cafe, always playing, easy to ignore, yet impossible to imagine the place without it. When you leave, that music stops, and the silence, which once felt like their refuge, becomes a stage for memories. At first, they dismiss these thoughts. They tell themselves these moments are coincidences, meaningless, but the human brain has a strange mechanism. It binds emotions to specific sights, senses, and sounds. A certain street, a particular time of day, the tone of a voice, all become carriers of your presence. These echoes unsettle the avoidant because their identity is built on the belief that they are emotionally self-sufficient, that they can't be shaken by someone's absence. But when even ordinary things start to feel heavier, that certainty begins to crumble. They might not reach out immediately. They might even double down on detachment. But the truth is, every echo leaves a mark, and these reminders are never under their control. They arrive without warning, without permission, and without a way to stop them. There was a time they believed you could be replaced, but as these echoes grow louder, they begin to realize that your way of being, the space you filled in their life, cannot be duplicated. Philosopher Simone Weil once wrote, "Attachment is the great fabricator of illusions. Reality can be obtained only by someone who is detached. The avoidant once believed that distance would grant them freedom. But these echoes, soft, sharp, and sudden, remind them that distance hasn't freed them at all. It has only deepened the emptiness. This is their second silent realization, that absence doesn't always scream. Sometimes it comes in the smallest things, whispering your name inside them long after you've gone. The mirror they can't escape when they start seeing the parts of themselves they avoided. For an avoidant, distance is not just a way to protect themselves from others, it's a way to protect themselves from themselves. As long as they can keep someone at arm's length, they can avoid looking too closely at their own fears, insecurities, and patterns. You were a distraction from that inner work too, not because you intended to be, but because your presence gave them someone else to focus on, someone else to manage distance from. When you leave, the distraction is gone. And in that space, a mirror appears, one they cannot cover or walk away from. It's not a literal mirror, but a psychological one. Situations, emotions, and moments where they are forced to see the traits they've been denying. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "Mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things." For the avoidant, the loss is not just about you, it's about losing the illusion that their patterns keep them safe. Without you there, the patterns stand alone, naked, exposed for what they are. Habits that push love away, not protect it. At first, they resist the mirror, they blame you, they justify themselves. They cling to old narratives, "I just wasn't ready," or "it wasn't the right time." But as the days pass and the echoes of what's missing keep returning, the reflection grows sharper. They notice the contradictions, how they wanted love but feared closeness, how they valued you but treated you as replaceable, how they wanted stability but fueled instability. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." In that moment, the avoidant begins to sense that the distance they thought was strength was actually shaping them into someone they never wanted to become. This realization is uncomfortable because it's private. No one else sees it, but they feel it deeply. It shows up when they can't connect with new people the way they thought they could. It shows up when they remember the way you forgave them for things others wouldn't tolerate and realize they took it for granted. It shows up when they recognize that they are repeating the same cycle with someone else and the ending is already predictable. The mirror doesn't just reflect who they are, it reflects who they could have been if they had chosen differently. It forces them to confront the fact that the parts of themselves they avoided are the very parts that cost them the connection they now miss. This is their third silent realization that you didn't just leave, you left them with themselves. And for someone who has built a life around avoiding inner confrontation, that is the heaviest presence of all. The return that no longer fits when they realize coming back won't feel the same. For an avoidant, the idea of coming back is never entirely erased. Even when they leave, pull away, or cut off contact, they keep a quiet door open in their mind, a mental shortcut that leads straight back to you. They believe that no matter how much time passes, the familiarity will still be there. The same warmth, the same acceptance, the same role you once played in their life. This belief is comforting for them. It allows them to leave without fully losing, to distance without truly ending. In their mind, the return is always possible, and when it happens, the connection will simply pick up where it left off. But the shock comes when they finally try, when they take that step back toward you, expecting the same space to exist, and instead they find a stranger in the place where you once stood. Philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." This is exactly the moment the avoidant faces. They left thinking time would freeze the version of you they knew, but in their absence, you changed. You learned, healed, and shifted the way you see them and the way you see yourself. When they return, it's not just your face that feels different. It's your boundaries. It's the way you no longer soften your edges to make them comfortable. It's the absence of that unconditional acceptance they once relied on. This is where the discomfort sets in. They try the old words, the old charm, maybe even a new promise, but nothing lands the way it used to because you're no longer standing in the same emotional place. They thought the return was an act of control. Instead, it becomes a moment of exposure, a realization that they can't walk back into a chapter that's already been closed. Psychologist Carl Jung wrote, "You meet yourself in the past only to realize you have outgrown it. For the avoidant, your transformation is undeniable proof that the version of you they thought they could always access no longer exists." And here's the deepest sting. It's not rejection in the loud, dramatic sense. It's the quiet truth that they don't quite fit in your world anymore. The return isn't a reunion, it's a reminder of how much has changed. This is the fifth and final silent realization, when the avoidant learns that coming back is not the reset they imagined, but a confrontation with the fact that the space they once occupied has been replaced, not by someone else, but by the stronger version of you. In the end, breaking an avoidance expectation isn't about revenge, manipulation, or proving a point. It's about rewriting the script they thought they knew by choosing yourself instead of chasing them. When you walk away without playing the old pattern, without the follow-up text, without the emotional explanations, you send a message far louder than any confrontation could deliver. You are no longer willing to participate in a relationship that costs you your dignity. An avoidant survives on the silent belief that you'll always return, no matter how far they push you away. But when you stop returning, that belief fractures. Over time, they start to realize that their safety net, your presence, wasn't something they were entitled to. It was something you chose to give. And now you've chosen differently. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Once you label me, you negate me. In a similar way, once they've labeled you as the one who always comes back, they stop seeing your full value. Walking away without warning breaks that label. It forces them to face you as a complete, autonomous person they can't define or predict. This is not about making them regret losing you, though often they do. It's about stepping out of their control and back into your own life. It's about showing through your actions that you are the one who decides when your story ends and how. And in that moment, you're not just breaking their expectations. You're building a life where you no longer need their validation to feel complete."